where the vice comes in. I really don't see what the big negative impact on our society is. Some horny guys who can't get any would finally get some. Some women who probably have no other skills are making money. Where's the downside, is what I'm asking you. Show me the big downside to legal prostitution. Legal regulated prostitution, that is. I mean, obviously there's a downside to, you know, Eileen Warno's truck stop hookers that, you know, are out there sucking dick because they've been abused since childhood and all that shit. But we're not talking about that. We're not talking about the filthy, dirty, back alley hookers. We're talking about legalized prostitution where you have to get a license and you have to meet certain standards and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I think that's a good idea. Sorry. You know, I've been thinking about that, actually, my whole philosophy. And I realized that really I'm not so much really a libertarian, because I believe in government involvement in a lot of things. The thing is that I think that the government's role is to preserve freedoms, is to make sure that people's rights are not trampled on. And really, I think that was the system that that the Founding Fathers intended to set up. Of course, they only intended to set up for white male landowners, but you know, our definitions have broadened since then. And I think that what we really want is just a power that is on our side. And, you know, socialism definitely doesn't deliver that, because that's all about the collective. That's all about what's the best for the most. But we need a government that's asking what's the best for the individual. And I don't know if that would necessarily be a smaller government, but I think that's a government, and I think taxes should be voluntary also. And, you know, people say things like, you know, no one would pay them, but, you know, I think that a lot of people would. I think that a lot of people would pay a reasonable tax if asked and shown what it was going towards. And I think a lot of it could be privatized also. I'm not against privatization of most things. I think the DMV should be privatized. I think a lot of that stuff should be privatized. But I think it should be regulated by a central body. And that's kind of my idea about government. So I don't really know if I necessarily fall under the heading of libertarian or not. I'm still thinking about it, I guess. But that's really what I've always kind of believed, and it just seemed like libertarian was the closest ideologically. But I have too many. There's too many things like these free market anarchists have kind of turned me off to a lot of that stuff, because it just seems like they've decided that force is immoral, and therefore it shouldn't exist. It's like they've failed to understand the concept of a necessary evil. And I don't think that government has to be evil by necessity. I think it can be good if we figure out a way to incentivize it to be good. And I don't think we've found that yet, which is why I think that we're better off trying to change things slowly than we are trying to change things suddenly. And that is why I have changed my mind. And I do plan on voting for Ron Paul in the next primaries, and hopefully, but unlikely, in the general election. I still don't like his stance on church-state issues, and I'd really like a clarification from him on that. But I support him in too many other things for me to ignore. I like his non-intervention ideas. I like the fact that he's running on peace. And I like the fact that he's a fiscal conservative. And I think those are all good things. And I like the fact that he's not taken the ideas to some unnatural extreme like people like Ex Omniverse and Liberty is Not Given have taken them. and I was starting to take them for a while. I think that we need someone who can be who can understand that we need freedom, but we also need some measure of control. And hopefully, though, I mean, I think that anarcho-capitalists have it right in the long run. I think that ultimately we should strive in the future to not have a giant government, but you have to do it in little steps. You can't just expect broad sweeping changes. That's going to be a bloody fucking revolution, and I don't think anyone should want that. Anyway, I veered way the fuck off topic. The third thing I wanted to criticize you on was this idea that animals are in no way superior to human beings, and this is something that you and I have kind of clashed on before. Basically, you say that because we are the most intelligent species, we automatically attribute intelligence to be the greatest of traits. That we say that we are superior because intelligence is the most extraordinary trait that a species could possibly have. Well, you know, I think that it's kind of, you know, the very fact that we are conscious of ourselves, the very fact that we can be introspective, the very fact that we have imagination, that we can calculate, that we assign value to things, makes us the most valuable, because we're the only barometer of value. Value is a totally human concept. Things don't really have value without human beings. I mean, you know, you said if you ask a turtle why it was what was the best, they would say it was the best because it had a shell. But really, a turtle doesn't give a fuck. A turtle doesn't know what best means. It has no concept in its little turtle brain for best. Only we really have that mechanism where we try to assign certain values to things. Maybe other species do in a primitive way, like a dog might have a food that it prefers, or a monkey, you know, might like the big rock as opposed to the little rock, or something like that. But we're the only people who have that broad definition of value. Like, we're the only things that can look at a painting and say, this is art, rather than just saying, ooh, this is pretty colors. So, if we are the only barometer of value that we know of, there may be other species elsewhere in the galaxy or the universe that attribute value to things. But since we're the only species that makes such judgments to begin with, then I think it's fair for us to say that we're the most valuable things in the world. Although you have to wonder what that does to the value of value itself. But that's an entirely separate argument. Anyway, amazing atheist! Peace the fuck out.